Hello and welcome to Lawyers, a podcast for the people. Lawyers from the same place. Learn, grow, inspire, and be inspired. So come along and ride on this fantastic road. Let us go be great together. I'm Brandon J. Wallace, Esquire, and I'll be your captain the whole time, and I sure am glad you're here. Lawyers is brought to you by Apex, where aptitude meets excellence. And powered by the Green Law Firm, your one-stop shop for everything real estate in Tennessee and Mississippi. Our Voyage Vibe today is brought to us by Urban David Higgins. This is Back Middle Sound. Shout out to the Memphis Music Festival this time. Let's get right in to the notice. Well, friends, we've got a super exciting show today, jam-packed, and so I'm going to keep duly noted very short. We've been following politics all season long, and of course, the long-awaited presidential debate happened since we last met, and we got a chance to see former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris go back and forth on the debate stage on ABC this past Tuesday. It was an interesting debate, certainly better than the last presidential debate, if you ask me. I gotta say, unfortunately, the big takeaway or the big thing that folks are talking about and debunking, the major big thing, is the former president's claim that Haitian immigrants, migrants or immigrants, were eating cats and dogs, pets of people in Springfield, Ohio. It's an outlandish claim that's been debunked over and over again as completely false. But it's been something that's been run with in terms of the narrative or in terms of the focus of the media and the people, because it has exploded. And even if people are just spending time debunking it, it's taking up the space. And I think I heard someone pontificate that was intentional, that sort of rhetoric is intentional in order to focus the attention on the former president rather than the issues. Neither here nor there. I think it's absolutely absurd that sort of claim we've got to spend so much time talking about it and debunking the claim. I think I was very proud of my fellow Bison, Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris. I was proud of her showing, and I think she looked presidential and she was strong. She was smart, and she showed all of that in the debate. I got to tell you, while I was proud of her, there's a part of me that was very disappointed in our country. Because I look at how qualified she is, how smart she is. I mean, she's brilliant. She has command of the issue. She's presidential. And to think that she is running neck and neck, even almost in many states, with the former president is disappointing for our nation, in my view. It brought me a little bit of sadness just to think that she could lose and he could win again, despite all the things that we know to be true about the former president, including the fact that he stole state secrets, he added trillions of dollars to the deficit, he mishandled COVID terribly and caused is responsible for the deaths of so many thousands of Americans because he mishandled it. We know that he cozies up to dictators and he wants to be a dictator on day one. And we just know he's not a truthful person. And yet he's neck and neck with Vice President Kamala Harris. So I don't know. I am still working through that. I'm still processing my feelings about that, but I'm going to let that be it so I don't spend too much time with that. I don't want to rest in that today. I'm going to rest in the fact that we've got an exciting show. We've got exciting things happening both in the nation and here with lawyers. So that's duly noted for now. There's so much more to speak about. I guess I'll make one quick sort of honorable mention as update with my council member, Trayon White, who is facing bribery charges. He entered a plea of not guilty in the federal district court in Washington, D.C. Earlier this week. And it's been really interesting to see the ward rally around him. So we'll just continue to see. We're going to look at the evidence. I saw some photos again, and that's going to be an interesting case to watch. So we'll deal with that some more, but just wanted to honorably mention that. And then so I'm going to let that be it. I'm excited to get to our lawyers segment. So why don't we wrap it up? We'll wrap up lawyers and we'll be right back. Sorry, we'll wrap up duly noted and we'll be right back with lawyers. All right, friends, we are back and it's now time for lawyerish. I am super excited, terribly excited, elated to speak with my good friend and my frat brother and my colleague in the field, the Honorable Justice Carl A. Walker has joined us today. Justice Walker he's a justice in the appellate level in the great state of Illinois. He's had a long career, practiced 14 years before ascending to the bench, and has now been on the bench, I think some almost 18 or 19 years at this point. And he has a wealth of knowledge. He's a brilliant man. He's also an honorable member of the best fraternity in the world. Of course, that's Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. And so I'm very grateful to welcome him to Lawyerish. Justice Walker, welcome to Lawyerish.
Thank you. I am glad to be here with you, my brother attorney Brandon Wallace, and also brother Edmonds, and also the lawyer whom I just met today. And I apologize that I don't have the name. If you could please say it for me.
Yeah, that's Angela Green. Angela Green.
Attorney Green. I apologize, Attorney Green. But I'm glad that you are on with us and that we're all on together and prepared to discuss whatever it is that we're going to be discussing.
Well, thanks, Judge Walker, Honorable Walker. Glad to have you on again. So Angela Green, for those not familiar, she's the managing partner at the Green Law Firm, and she's helping to sort of power lawyerish, as you hear us talk about. And Russell Edmonds is our Apex highlight guest, so he'll be on a little bit later. We'll get a chance to talk with him. But today, Judge, we're going to just talk to you. We want to talk to you for a few minutes and understand your law journey. And so, again, we really appreciate you taking the time. And I know you've got a lot going on right now. And just folks who are watching on YouTube, we're not going to see Justice Walker today, but we do get to hear from him. And so we're grateful for that. So, Justice Walker, I know you've got a busy schedule, and we don't have a whole lot of time with you. And so I want to jump into it. So can you just talk to us about how you decided to join the legal field? What made you want to go to be a lawyer?
Well, first of all, it started as a joke for me when I was in high school. And the joke was whether or not the name of my firm would be Walker and Taylor, or Taylor and Walker. A friend of mine, we both had taken a business law class, and we became extremely interested in the law pursuant to that class. And again, it was just a joke. I went to a really good high school, and in my high school, we had what's referred to in college as majors. And I actually majored in accounting while I was in high school. So it was unprecedented that I actually took 3 years of accounting while I was in high school. And so as I was headed off to the University of Illinois at Urbana to major in pre-law so that I could go to law school, my high school accounting teacher told me that I should not major in pre-law, but instead I should major in accounting because I was a good accounting student, and that if I didn't go to law school right away, I would always be able to get a job. Well, Mrs. Peterson must have had a crystal ball because the year that I graduated college, my sister was killed in a car accident, and I did not and could not go to law school right away. I needed some time to sort of grieve and mourn and deal with that. So the good thing though is I had an accounting degree, and I ended up going to work for a firm, and they paid for me to take the CPA exam because that was one of the things that they wanted me to do as an accounting major. I did, and I passed the CPA exam, and I ended up becoming a certified public accountant. Did that for a couple of years, and then subsequently went on to law school and went to the University of Iowa College of Law. And it was today it was a good thing. I'm glad that I took the CPA exam. Of course, regretted losing my sister, but it did take my life in another direction. And one thing that it does for me is pretty much in any group, when people find out that not only am I a lawyer, but also a certified public accountant, it immediately labels me as smart because there's a lot of people out there who majored in accounting who could never pass the CPA exam. And right now on our court in Illinois, we have about 900 judges in the state, and we have only 2 judges in the entire state who are lawyers and CPAs. So it's generally impressive for most people to know that I've got that kind of background.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
I
but
think
anyway, that's how I went.
I
I'm
think
sorry.
it. No, no, it's all right. I apologize. I think just the fact that you, as an attorney, have a math background, a CPA background, is pretty incredible in itself, right? Because often a running joke or sort of understanding with a lot of lawyers is that lawyers don't like numbers. Unless they're calculating damages, it's like it's like lawyers necessarily aren't good at math. I think that's obviously not necessarily true, but it's always been a running joke. I've heard that joke many times, and so for you to not only be really good at it, but to be a certified CPA is something that you probably don't see often, as you mentioned.
Yes, you're
Um,
absolutely correct.
So now, when before you went to law school, you were CPA, so you did that for some time, and then I guess how long did it take for you to decide that you wanted to continue on the legal path?
Well, I had never really changed my mind about going to law school. It was
Okay.
really just something that I needed to put off
Okay.
because, of course, my mother was pretty distraught at that time, and just took a couple of years to kind of regroup myself. And eventually, my family kept reminding me that I'm supposed to go to law school, and I did. And the interesting thing about it is when I graduated law school, my mother rented a bus similar to like a Greyhound Trailway type bus. And she actually brought about 75 people down for my graduation. And of course,
Wow.
she paid for everything. And it was really a big deal. Uh, so when my son graduated, we did something similar to that, except we all had to fly to Houston, but about 60 of us flew to Houston for my son's graduation when he graduated just this past May.
Yes. Well, congrats to him and to you. I had the opportunity to meet him actually down in Houston. I guess was that last year or not sure.
Conclave
Yeah.
2023.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I had an opportunity to meet him, and so he was still a budding law student, and so now he's practicing and has taken the bar and is practicing. So congrats to him, and congrats to you as well. I imagine that must feel like quite an accomplishment, both for him and for you.
It is. It really is. And it's a great feeling. I'm so proud of him. I'm so glad that he did go to law school. He says he has no interest in ever becoming a judge, but that's okay. That's not something that I'm asking him to do or looking for him to do. But I do think that it's a phenomenal career as well.
Indeed. And I want to get into that a little bit more, but I'd like to just touch on the fact that, you practice, as I mentioned earlier, you practice before becoming a judge. You practice law. You were in private practice for, I think, what did I read? 14 years. Is that right? and you
Yes.
had a sort of dynamic practice in different areas. I think you did criminal law along with you know other litigation. Can you talk to us about what your practice was like? And I think one of the questions I always ask folks is what maybe it was your most teachable moment, and what was maybe your highlight during your years in private practice.
Yeah, what's interesting about all of that is that things don't come to mind until people ask questions like you just asked, which I think is a great question. Thank you for that question, because I wouldn't have said some things I'm about to say. I would not have otherwise said the things I'm about to say. I started with a small firm in the Quad Cities area right after law school. A small firm. There was about 20 attorneys in the firm, and I'm also licensed to practice law in the state of Iowa, in addition to the state of Illinois. I took both bars because at that time, Iowa didn't use the multi-state exam, which is what it was called then. I know it's now called the Uniform Bar Exam. But Iowa had its own bar exam. It was 3 days, and it was all essay
Wow.
because that's the way they operate. And of course, I passed the Iowa bar, and then subsequently took the Illinois bar exam and passed the Illinois bar exam about 2 months later. And I practiced in the Quad Cities, and I would go to court in Iowa and in Illinois. Iowa generally starts court a little bit earlier than Illinois, so basically practicing in both states and licensed in both states, and it was a good time. I was there for a brief period of time, and then I went back. I came back to Chicago, and I joined even a smaller firm, uh, Pulliam and Pulliam, and I was there for some time, and it was a really good opportunity because they really worked closely with me, allowed me to practice law, but also allowed me to be able to make my own money, and gave me. I mean, people have always helped me. Gave me free office space until I was able to start paying rent, and that all worked out really well, and just gave me an opportunity to do well, which is why I'm always reaching out to help someone else because I've received so much help. Throughout my life. And that's why people often say, or at least I say, that your personality can take you places that your talents cannot. And it's really about having that personality that people like to work with. And I'm not bragging on myself, but I'm just simply saying that it's really important to everybody to just be kind to people. And when you're kind, opportunities just constantly flow your way, and avoid making negative comments about people that can possibly get out and get back to them. And just the blessings just tend to really flow. And that's what has happened in my life. But then a group of us who were all CPA lawyers decided that we wanted to start a law firm together. There were 6 of us. We had 3 named partners. The name of the firm was McWhorter Walker Lucy. And we started, and we did really well, got things going, had office space, large office space, had several people working for us. And that went really well for a number of years. And then my 2 partners both ended up going in a different direction. One of them went through a divorce, and pursuant to his divorce, he was just kind of torn apart for the most part. And another one of my partners decided to get an LLM. So and he went back to school. And so basically, I was left with the firm, and I continued the firm on. And it was very successful for years. And finally, I got a phone call asking me if I was interested in an appointment to the bench. I think I declined it the first time. And the second time around, I decided to take it. And that's how I ended up becoming a judge. And in my practice, I did absolutely everything. Uh, that's the good thing about the practice of law. With my medical malpractice cases, I would refer those out to another lawyer who actually exclusively handled medical malpractice and large dollar negligent cases. And I had another lawyer that I referred workers' comp cases to, and of course, I did criminal work. I did literally everything, both criminal and civil, insurance litigation. I was just doing everything. And of course, I had people working for me and helping with that and making it work for me. At the same time, I would serve a couple of days a week as an administrative law judge with the city of Chicago's Department of Administrative Hearings. So, of course, I was really, really busy all the time. Fortunately, during most of that time, my kids were pretty young. When I became a judge, my kids were all under 10. So that was a good thing. So I was, because once I became a judge, of course, it became more of a focus, of course, on, what we need to do for them. And of course, I was always there for them even before that, because my weekends were dedicated to them. I never partied. I didn't go anywhere my kids couldn't go. So if somebody was having a party at a bar, I didn't go because my kids couldn't go. So, because I just took them everywhere I went. They went to Cook County Bar Association meetings with me. Everybody in the Cook County Bar Association knew my kids. Now with the Illinois Judicial Council, which I previously served as president back in 2013 to 14, my kids were always at those meetings, so all the judges know my kids, and so they've just been that important part of my life, and they're still that way, of course. Still a
Yeah.
very close relationship, and they're with me all the time and doing things with me all the time. So that's kind of the story. I can tell more, but I think it's better if you ask questions because you'll bring out the best in me if you ask
Yeah.
questions.
Okay. Well, I want to get back to what maybe during that time, right? During your, we could just actually expand even into your judicial career. I want to know what maybe you would say it has been your most teachable moment. So some space that you've entered where it's like, okay, I've learned a lesson, and I'm not going to learn that again. And then, what's been your highlight? What's been your, what's been the thing that says that's happened or that you've experienced in your practice that's been that said, you know what, I'm doing the right thing here. I'm in my lane, and this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Well, that's interesting, and that's a great question. Let me just say, but I'm one of those people that learn from the experiences of others. I
Mm.
don't have to experience everything for myself. If you say, "Hey, this is how it is," I'm going to say, "Well, Attorney Wallace says that's what's going to happen," so I'm not going to try it. So I'm not going to go in that lane. So but one experience that I did have, and I look back on it and I appreciate the way I handle it as I think about all the other different ways I could have handled it. I was a young lawyer. I probably had been a lawyer for 2 years at this point. I was practicing here in Chicago, and I was working on a buildings violations case. My client was the owner of the property, and the property was going to be demolished. So once my client contacted me, I filed a motion to get it stayed and, of course, not have it demolished. And when I came into court, the city attorney was there, and the judge actually granted my motion to stay the tearing down of the property, which was to occur, I want to say within the next 2 or 3 days. So again, I was a young lawyer. I wrote the order on as what the judge said. And after I wrote the order, the attorney who and I'm just only saying this just happens to have been a older white male attorney. I gave him the order because that's what you do. If you write the order for the court, you show it to the other side for them to approve the order, right? Anybody who's practiced law knows that. And then you give it to the clerk so the clerk can take it to the judge to have the judge sign it. Because at this point, the judge had left the courtroom. And I handed the order to the attorney, and the attorney took the order and he first tore it in half. Then he tore it into fourths. Then he tore it into eighths. Then he
Oh,
tore it into sixteenths. And then he tore it into 30 seconds. Then he tore it into 64, then 64ths, and then he threw it on the table. And he
oh
says,
wow.
"We don't use those. We have form orders that we use."
We,
Now, I
you
know
said
some
we have.
lawyers that would have popped him in his mouth at that point, but fortunately, I'm not a violent individual, and that was not my reaction. My reaction was just simply, the clerk saw it too, and the clerk told the judge about it. The judge admonished him, and I'm not gonna say too much more about that because there's been some other things associated with it since then, but. But it's been all good from my standpoint because I say to myself that we have to really think about what we'll do in certain situations. And a lot of people don't do that. It's kind of like why we have fire drills so that we'll know what to do and we'll just do what we know to do. And you have to sometimes put yourself into some terrible situations and think about, well, you don't have to think about what you're going to do because you're going to do what you've always said you would do. And I knew that if something like that happened, that I was not going to get violent. And so I didn't. And I thank God that's the way I handled it, just simply reporting it. And it was actually detrimental to that attorney down the road. I know he tried to become a judge a few times, and I'm sure that information probably came up. But as to what he did in that situation. But I'm just saying that it comes back to what I said very early on too, about how important it is to be careful how we're treating people, because and maybe I didn't say that, but I'm saying it now. But because you just don't know where life is going to take you, you don't know what road you're going to end up on. My mother used to say that to us all the time, and that's how I live. And I could say more about it because there's another situation that I had where I talk about how preparing yourself for what you would do. I was with my daughter at the time. My daughter was 10, and we were going into a mall, and some guys standing. It was late. It was like in January, and it was about 8:30 in the evening. The mall's close to closing time. Malls close at 9 here in Chicago. At least at that time they did. Sometimes they close earlier now since COVID. But there was three guys tried to rob us. They had a gun. But I had already said to myself years before that, and I was a judge too, by the way. I had been a judge for like 2 years, and they put the gun on us and they told us, y'all going with us. And I had always said that I would never go to the second location. I'd never go to the second crime scene. And
Yeah.
I responded just the way that I said I would always respond. And anybody who knows me knows that I don't use foul language, but I have heard foul language before. So I had to use some language that these kids would understand. They ended up getting 14 years in jail and didn't even rob us. But it's just because it was, of course, it was a attempt robbery. But it's just one of those things, just always preparing yourself for what's next because you don't know what's next. So you want to think about what could be next and sort of be prepared for it. I'm going to stop there because I think if you ask questions that we can get a lot more done.
Okay. Well, I want to move to your career as a judge and as a justice, and now a justice. You were appointed to the bench, and later, or you, I think you ran actually, if I'm not mistaken. Isn't that right? You ran for a judge seat, and you won, and later you were appointed as an appellate justice. And I'd like to
Well,
unpack
let me
for.
just correct you before you
Okay,
go to the next part of that.
please.
I was appointed and I subsequently won my election. And then but I was already on the bench when I
I
won my
see.
election in November.
Okay, so you ran as an incumbent, from the appointment. Understood. Okay, thank you for that. And so, what I'd like to do is, I'd like for our listeners to understand the difference between, your life as a judge, I guess you say your work as a judge and your work as a justice. As a judge, you're hearing cases, you're sort of deciding facts. Sometimes, right, you're sort of deciding law, but not really. Sometimes you're deciding either or, depending on what kind of case you're hearing. And then, in terms of your as a justice on the appellate level, you're making sure the lower courts have followed the law, et cetera. Can you just speak to what that's like, what the difference is, and how that changed your sort of your day to day work life?
Sure. Yeah. On the trial court, of course, judges sit on the bench pretty much all day, every day for the most part. And you have cases that are on your docket. Sometimes you have no control over what's going to appear in your courtroom because sometimes cases are there pursuant to a motion that someone has been filed. And if you're in maybe say a traffic courtroom, for example, police just simply write tickets and those tickets come to your courtroom. You don't know what's coming until the morning of. And very often judges do look at their files. They kind of get familiar with them before they have the court call to start. And then other times they don't. It just depends on what kind of courtroom it is. And then you have other situations too, even in civil cases sometimes, like the clerk's office will just schedule things on your docket, say an eviction court, for example. People come in, they file an eviction case, and that case will just get set to the judge's docket, and those cases are just on the judge's call. And the trial court judges are basically in the courtroom hearing the cases. It could be traffic, it could be an eviction, it could be a juvenile justice situation, it could be a divorce, it could be a medical malpractice case, could be some form of eminent domain, could be almost anything. And the parties come before you. Generally, the first court date, you're going to just get a feel for what the case is all about, find out if there are going to be any dispositive motions filed in the case, whether or not there's been an appearance filed by the defendant. You're just kind of dealing with those things, and you'll just set a status date. You may enter a discovery order. You may do all of that on that first court date. And then you may not. Just depends on whether or not the defendant has been served. If he has been served, then you'll just continue it and you'll issue an alias summons and they'll take another bite at the apple to try to get the defendant served. Just depends on, again, what kind of case you're dealing with. But all of that is kind of what the judge does. And then the judge will eventually, after discovery is closed, the judge will probably set the case for trial. And once they set it for trial, there's a trial date set. Generally, judges don't like to change trial dates because they usually cleared their schedule to be able to do those trials. But if there's an emergency, somebody's passed away or somebody's in the hospital or something, those are all good causes for changing trial dates, and the judges will do that. But the judge will, if they do decide to do a trial, that could be a bench trial or a jury trial, depending on the type of case, depending on the election of the parties and so forth. If it's uh, a jury trial, ultimately the jury will, the judge will first of all panel a jury, and they'll have the voir dire and they'll ask the jury all kinds of questions and decide who's going, whether or not this juror is biased, and can they sit on the panel of this case based upon, do they have any knowledge of any of the attorneys on the case, any of the parties in the case, or any of the witnesses in the case. And if it's a jury trial, they'll then, once they get the jury in place, the jury will hear the case, the jury will make the decision as to whether or not the one party or the other prevails in the case. If it's a criminal case, guilty or not guilty for the defendant. If it's a civil case, it'll be a judgment for the plaintiff or judgment for the defendant after they've heard the entire trial and also have heard closing arguments from the parties. They'll go back and deliberate and make that decision. If it's a bench trial, then the judge will make all those decisions. The jury wouldn't make any. The judge would listen to the case, take notes, and ultimately rule for one party or the other. A criminal case, the judge can find the defendant guilty or not guilty. Could even do a judgment not with, well, in a civil criminal, in a jury case, they could do judgment notwithstanding the verdict. They're done very rarely, though. They could also issue a directed verdict in a case if they feel like that, say in a criminal case, the state has not presented enough evidence to even have the defense to go forward. They would generally do that. It's rarely done on the judge's own motion, though. It usually would be a motion from the defense. And those verdicts could be also entered in civil cases, but you don't see them as often in civil cases. Well, I guess you could, but because they could, yeah, you could see a directed verdict in a civil case. And so then the judge makes all those decisions, and the jury has no parts in it. And then the judge decides who's, as I said, who's going to prevail, and they issue their order. Now, once they've done that, then the party has to file a motion to reconsider if they intend to appeal. They have to give the trial court judge an opportunity to correct any errors that the judge has made. Once they've done that, then they can appeal. They usually have 30 days from the date that the last dispositive motion was entered, or dispositive order, I should say, from the judge. They have 30 days from that date to file their notice of appeal. Now, there are situations where they can file a late notice of appeal. And I don't know if we want to get too much into that. I
No,
can.
not really.
I'll wait.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
okay.
we're
Yeah,
running out of time.
okay.
And I want to, so we
But
kind of,
get to the appellate court.
yes, if you would.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to move on to the appellate court. So in the appellate court, we review the trial court's decisions, and it depends upon what the issue is on appeal. Different types of issues come before us. If it's a question of law, we do a de novo review, which means we give almost no deference to what the trial court did. We review the case ourselves, and we determine what the law is and whether or not the law is properly applied, whether or not the judge erred in their application of the law. If it's a factual issue, then we're looking to see whether or not the judge's finding was against the manifest weight of the evidence. That's the only way we'll reverse, is that it's against the manifest weight of the evidence. And in order to find something against the manifest weight of the evidence, it basically would have to be a situation where no reasonable person would have ruled the way the trial court judge ruled. That's where you have a judgment that's against the manifest weight of the evidence. And then sometimes you have that middle level too, where a clearly erroneous standard may be used. That's where you have to apply the facts to the law and determine whether or not the judge made a bad decision. But I'll kind of let you ask questions. I think we'll go further with the questions, but I can keep talking if you want me to.
No. I think some of our audiences, I'm a lawyer, but some of our audience, they are not lawyers. So I don't want to put them to sleep with some of our minutia.
Okay.
But I want to make sure that folks understand. So you're, as an appellate level judge, you're reviewing the decisions of the lower level court. And I wonder, I guess I sort of wonder, what is it like to know that I guess you wield such power? I mean, what is that like? What does that feel like? How do you keep that in check? How do you become a good judge? I guess that's sort of the underlying question. How do you become a good judge and stay a good one?
Interesting, because I don't even think of it as that, as wielding power. I think of it just as, let's get this right.
Mm.
How do we figure out what the issues are in the case, and how do we resolve those issues such that everybody has had a fair opportunity to be heard, everybody has had a fair opportunity to present their arguments. Because what we do too is we do schedule oral arguments on some cases, not all. It just depends. First of all, if the parties don't request oral arguments, we very rarely schedule them. Now, we have scheduled them in cases where the parties didn't request them, but for the most part, we don't.
Okay.
A call came in on my phone, so you may have lost me for a minute there.
Yeah, we did.
But yeah, I don't think of it as because I'm not really kind of a power kind of guy. I'm just always I want to get things right. And that's really what sometimes that's the parties want. They just want an opportunity to be heard, because sometimes they feel like that in the trial court, that nobody's listening to them. Nobody gave them a chance to say what they needed to say. Because what I found when I was in the trial court, and I would just let people say everything they had to say. Now, if they start repeating themselves, then that's when I cut them off. And once they're done, then now it's my turn to rule, and I'll go through everything that they said, repeat it, regurgitate back to them to make sure I've gotten the facts right. Then I rule. And I think when you do it that way, people leave the courtroom feeling that they've been treated fairly, and they usually can accept our rulings when that happens. So, and it's the same way on the appellate court. All of our decisions are in writing. We don't ever just rule from the cuff or rule from the bench or rule without talking to two other people. Every case has three justices assigned to the case, and one justice will ultimately be the author. Someone else may decide to write a special concurrence, and someone else may decide to write a dissent and express their view of that way the case should be decided. But at least two people must agree. Someone else must sign off on the case that's written by the author in order for that case to become the opinion of the court. So at least two people must agree. One person could decide to write a dissent, or even sometimes we all agree, but one person wants to write a special concurrence to say some other reasons as to why the case should be decided the way it was decided, but maybe the other two justices didn't agree with that, so that person will just write a special concurrence. And sometimes those special concurrences become the law. Sometimes the dissent becomes the law.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate the clarity there, and I think I certainly admire the focus on justice. Right, that is, we're trying to get to justice, right, and I think your work speaks to that. Speaking of which, and I don't know how much you can talk about this, but I can't talk to a judge of your caliber without, at least trying to get your opinion on the U.S. Supreme Court, the state of the court. As you know, the Supreme Court is sort of under a lot of pressure in terms of the ethics concerns, under the spotlight in terms of legitimacy. People are arguing that the legitimacy being sort of called into question. I want to know, what would you say the state of the court is at this sort of major inflection point in our country's history, and what impact do you think that might have on the overall justice system, or does it?
Well, it probably could have an impact on the overall justice system. There are people out there that don't trust the Supreme Court as much as they have in the past. I will admit that I do still trust our United States Supreme Court. I trust our state courts, because basically, as a judge, we've got to keep faith in the system, because if we don't have faith in the system, nobody will have faith in the system. And
Indeed.
if nobody has faith in the system, then we're going to be in a lot of trouble, because that means that nobody will respect the decisions of any judges. So I want to let people know that, especially in the state of Illinois, you can have complete faith in our justice system. I want you to have complete faith. I want you to know that our decisions are not based on favoritism. They're not based upon who's the richest or the poorest person in the courtroom. They're based strictly on the facts and the law of every case. And I do think that I know that I want people to continue to have faith in our justice system, because I think that I believe that it's one of the best in the world. So that's where I am with that. It's not
Okay.
perfect at all by any means, but it's one of the best in the world.
All right, Judge. Well, thank you for that. We'll leave it there. I thank you for spending some time with us today and shedding some light on what you do and how you do it, and the importance of the justice system. We'll work on the faith part. We're still a work in progress there, but maybe we'll get to where you are and get to experience it, the positive sides of it, right, as we dispense justice every day. So thank you again, Judge. Really appreciate your time. Excuse me. Thank you again, Justice Carl A. Walker. Thanks for spending time with us today, sir.
Thank you. And you ask some excellent questions. I appreciate all of them, and I've tried to answer them to the best of my ability.
You've done well, and maybe we'll have you back on one day to delve into some of the more other topics that we didn't get to address today.
That would be great.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, friends.
Have a good evening.
You do the same. Thank you. Hang tight, friends. We'll be right back with the Wellness Check. All right, friends, we're back. It's now time for the Wellness Check. And I want to let me know that it's okay to fall apart. Listen, we can't have it all together all the time. I'll say that again. We can't have it all together all the time. We're a work in progress, and sometimes it's okay to fall apart. That might mean crying. That might mean, curling up in a ball or just being in bed for a little while. It's okay to fall apart. The important thing to do is to make sure we establish safe spaces to go with our falling apartness. To whether that's a friend or a spouse or to church, to God, to accountability partner, whatever that is, a therapist. It's important to establish those safe spaces and to go there with our brokenness. And I think the other piece is don't be too hard on ourselves. We can't be too hard on ourselves because it's all right to fall apart. The important thing is that we go to those safe spaces, we utilize them, and we pull it together before it's all said and done. Just know that falling apart is a part of the process. As long as we pick it back up and put it back together, we'll be all right. That's your Wellness Check today. It's okay to fall apart. We'll be right back with our Apex Highlight. All right, friends, we are back, and it's now time for our Apex Highlight. I'm super excited to welcome our guest, Mr. Russell Edmonds. Russell is a graduate of Howard University, and he is a senior data analyst at AT&T. He also serves as the president of the Alpha Chapter Alumni Foundation, along with his work on lots of other different nonprofit boards. He is a man of service, and he's brilliant. And so I'm glad to welcome him here today. He's my president and also a good brother of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. Russell, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brandon. Pleasure to meet you in this environment.
In this space, absolutely. This is different. This is usually I refer to you as brother president, and so forgive me, folks, if I revert back to that in our space today. Before we get into your work with the Alpha Chapter Alumni Foundation, I want to talk a little bit about what you do professionally, because you work with AT&T. You are a senior data analyst. You've got an engineering degree, which means you're smart off the jump, right? And so I want to know, what is that? What do you actually do? What does that mean to be a data analyst for AT&T?
Right. I definitely took a non-linear route to get to where I am even in my short 3-year career, because I'm coming out of college with a degree in mechanical engineering, which I am not using in my day to day, but really entering the environment at a tech company and learning, what hard skills are employable and will be employable for years to come, and landed on data, retrained and upskilled to learn the skills to be a data analyst, and have been doing that full time really for a year now. And a lot of my job work in systems reliability, so we're gonna have a job for a while, at AT&T, and a lot of my work is really around quantifying when something does go wrong, how much is that costing our business, how much is it impacting our customers. So I really enjoy the opportunity to really marry what our customers are seeing all the way on one end to on the back end. I'm writing code, I'm working with app teams to understand what it is that they need to be doing to make our systems more reliable. So there's a lot of different touch points that the role offers me. It's really great in my early part of my career to get exposure to.
So does that connect at all with engineering? Do you use that? Do you use your mechanical engineering at all in your day to day?
I think I had made peace, I think my junior year of college, that I had no desire to actually use anything that I was learning in a classroom.
Okay.
But there are a lot of intangibles, the ability to teach yourself, to be a self-starter. I think to understand any system from its fundamental principles, those things apply, I think, across the board, professionally or really just in my day-to-day life. So I am using it, but not using my thermodynamics at all.
Okay. All right. Indeed. Okay. So, well, that's interesting. I find that super interesting because you've got this, you've kind of got, as I mentioned, the mechanical engineering, which is sort of science based. You've also got this sort of problem solving technology based center that kind of, is impressive to me because I'm not a technology guy. I like technology, but I don't always understand it. And so you seem to have a real knack for that. So I think what you're doing now, it seems to meld a little bit, of what you studied, along with a lot of just your passion for technology and kind of running things. Would you say that's accurate?
Absolutely, I definitely have a have a passion for technology. I think I have a lot of different passions, and even running my resume, my different experiences don't necessarily align very neatly. But I enjoy finding opportunities to delve into my passions, whether that's service, whether that's writing, organization, different things of that sort. I'll find different ways to sort of hit those interests of mine in my day
Yeah.
to day.
Indeed. Well, and it's all relevant. I think probably in particular, our one of the things that sort of unites all of us on the call today, all of the guests, the two guests, and myself, and probably Angela, as the justice mentioned, is our commitment to service, right? And I think you display that commitment to service. I've seen you do that, every day as I had the opportunity to work with you, with the Alpha Chapter Alumni Foundation, and also with the Bluff City Ball, which the Alpha Chapter Alumni Foundation is one of the beneficiaries of the ball that'll be happening. Shameless plug on October 5th here in Memphis, Tennessee. Please get your tickets and look for opportunities to sponsor. But can you just tell us then a little bit about ASAF, as we sometimes call it, what you do and why it's important?
Right. So, for me, my point of entry to establishing the Alumni Foundation really was born out of, I was chapter president, would have been my junior year. I'm not going to say how long ago that was, but I'll be honest, I was frustrated. I'm like, I feel like my profile should have some sort of, means to support us as a chapter. So, as soon as I graduated, me, my line brother, some of my more direct profile started brainstorming what that might look like. And, just timing wise, we had a very notable profile. He passed away, would have been in 2021. So a lot of older brothers also had a very similar interest in really getting organized and saying, hey, we're not going to be here forever. We need to find a place for our legacy to sort of take root and take hold for our chapter. So meeting of the minds in the middle with different generations and brothers really had came to the table with their ideas, and that's really where the foundation came from. So we're bringing together different generations of Alpha Chapter brothers, meeting their needs, making sure that we can continue to fellowship even as we enter our careers spread across the country, around the world, but also at the same time meeting the needs of our undergraduate brothers who are new to the fraternity, still struggling through college and all the different things that go along with that. So being able to meet the needs of a variety of people. It's really it's hard sometimes, but it's rewarding when when we can do it well. So definitely glad we've set that foundation in place.
Indeed, yeah, and I think it's been it's a new organization, fairly young, and so we're still in many ways finding our legs. But we are a nonprofit organization. Have been registered in the District of Columbia and federally as a 501c3, and so we're doing the great work that we do of supporting the educational efforts of our young people, and not just our young people, but campus wide, right? Because our young people are providing service both to the campus and to the broader community in Washington, D.C. And so it's a real honor to have done that work ourselves. You and I both in different decades, and we won't talk about my decade, what decade I was in, but done it to do that work in different decades, and then now to be able to support young brothers who are doing the same. I think one of the things I'm really excited about is the endowment at Howard University. We are sort of gearing up to be able to contribute to that so that we can support Howard University and to further the educational endeavors of young people on campus. What other, or maybe you could talk a little bit about that, and maybe what some of the other priorities of our organization are in terms of service and the good that we do for the community.
I used the word legacy earlier, and I think that really is kind of what gets the excitement around the endowment. I'm in my 20s, so legacy isn't quite top of mind for me, but in speaking and interacting with older brothers, that's really important for them, and they want something that will last, after they leave. So one of what we found the best way to establish that legacy as a foundation, as individual brothers, was by establishing an endowment fund with Howard University. So we're in the midst of planning and coordinating how we're going to accomplish that, and we've set together a multi-year plan in order to raise the funds necessary, because Howard has a uniquely high threshold among our HBCU counterparts in terms of establishing an endowment fund. But it's been a great learning experience for me, because this is a completely new field to myself, but also just in terms of fundraising, interacting with a variety of stakeholders, and really getting a seat at the table at the university. So all these things are important, and also great for learning for me as I'm still young and have a lot to learn. But in terms of what else we're able to do, I know for myself, and this is one of the initial things we wanted to accomplish on the younger end of our motivations for establishing some sort of alumni organization for Alpha Chapter Brothers, was we wanted some sort of repository of knowledge. We're a 110-year-old organization, in January, and we need to have a place where brothers can go, and we're not starting over from scratch every year to relearn how to do things. So we wanted to have a place where undergraduate brothers can learn from alumni who have done the job well, and can also make sure, we're a fraternity, we're built on those important, repeatable activities we do every year. That's what makes a fraternity great, is those things that we do repeatedly. So we wanted to have a space where we can train those brothers up and not expect them to know everything when they enter the door, and kind of understand that they're going to have to learn these things, right when they get through the door, if they're going to do them well. So we want to provide the resources for those undergraduate brothers to be successful, while they're on campus.
Yeah, it's also about sort of development as well, right? Don't we sort of focusing on sort of growing these young men to be pillars of the community that they are working towards, right? And I think one of the other big things I really appreciate is our preservation of history, and I think that's something that we're as a administration kind of focused on, and will continue to focus on as well. So much to do. There's lots of work to be done, and so we're very grateful. I'm grateful to have you at the helm, leading the way there. I want to pivot a little bit. So thank you for that. But I want to pivot a little bit to a little bit more on your personal professional journey. I'd like to know what maybe thus far, and it's as you said, it's been a young career, but I'd like to know what maybe has been your highlight thus far, and what has been sort of your most teachable moment. If you've got both of those, we'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I'll say probably the highlight of my career so far was I was able to moderate a panel with my vice president. She's or my vice president at the time at AT&T. She's a Spelman alum, really brilliant technologist, and she leads our technology development program at AT&T. And being able to moderate that panel where we're talking about technology, but also the theme was Black History Month, and this is something I'm passionate about. I took way more than my fair share of Africana Studies classes while at Howard, so it's something I'm very passionate about. And being able to tap into all those different interests, being able to do the public speaking, being able to interact with really leaders in technology across, she's a national leader in technology space. So being able to be at the forefront of that and speak was really a highlight, because it just tapped into so many things that I'm genuinely, passionate about and interested in doing. And you have to remind me the other question. I dove all the way in on on the highlight.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. The other question was, what's been your most teachable moment where you learned a lesson? You were like, you know what, I learned something, and I'm not going to have to learn that again.
I'll say there's a lot of, you make a lot of mistakes. I'll say one of the things is really just being adaptable and learning and realizing that what you think is gonna be the reality will not be the reality. And I think that came for me early on, before I even stepped foot, before I even graduated, because I'm applying for jobs in fall of 2020. So you can imagine how that was going, as a spring 2021 graduate. So understanding that the world is going to be a very dynamic and increasingly dynamic place, and that you will have to find your footing in it as it increasingly changes at an increasingly fast pace. So that really got me started in the mindset of, okay, I'm going to have to be constantly coming up a new learning curve and adapting to the world and shooting targets that are, 5-10 years in the future, because it's not going to look the same in a couple of years. In the technology space, I know I can speak to, it's going to look very different in a couple of years. And the training that we did, even 5 years ago, does not relate to how things are done today. It's, just even leaning on AI, the way people code today is very different than it was, 2-3 years ago. So you're going to constantly be coming up those learning curves and adapting to a new world every couple of months, it feels like. Indeed.
That's good. So listen, I'm running out of time. We gave a lot of time to Justice Walker, as we should. He's got a lot to talk about, but I wanted to, one of the other questions I always ask is, I'd like to know what counsel you may have for yourself, your younger self, or for some other young person who may be coming up in the ranks, either in service ranks or in the technology ranks or corporate world. What counsel would you have for your younger self or someone else coming up in the ranks?
I think I'd probably lean into some of the best advice I got while I was at Howard, and that was that you can't manage time, but you can manage your priorities. And honestly, you are the sum of what you do every day. So you need to make sure that what you aim to accomplish is aligned with what you're doing every day, because you cannot do everything. Something is going to fall. You have lots of opportunities. Sometimes you have to say no. Sometimes for the sake of your own, mental and physical well-being. Sometimes for me, it's just for the sake of, if I can't do it at a level and, that I'm going to be proud of. And if I can't produce a quality of product that I'm proud of, then I won't accept an opportunity, because that impacts my reputation at that point. So understanding what's important to you, managing your priorities with those objectives in mind, and understanding that sometimes they're going to change, on a day-to-day basis, but at the end of the day, you are really the sum of what you do on a regular basis. So,
well said. I will leave it there. I appreciate you taking the time to share with us and to give us that little bit of wisdom. And I'm wishing you all the best. I'm excited to see all the wonderful things that you're going to do and accomplish. You keep doing what you're doing, and the sky is the limit for you, sir. Brother President, thanks for your time.
Thank you, good brother.
All right, we'll be right back, friends, with our motivational moments. All right, friends, we are back. I'm sorry I held you long today, but we are wrapping up. This is your motivational moment. I want to remind you and me that our feelings are not facts. The feelings of inadequacies and unworthiness and the I'm not enoughness that we as people, as professionals, face, we have to remember, have to be reminded. I'm here to remind you that they're not always facts. Sometimes your feelings will fool you. And so we need to be clear on that. Remember that your feelings are not facts. Unpack those feelings. You might have to feel it. You might have to sit in it. But no, they're not always facts. And if you're feeling it, that might just mean that you need to work through it. Remember the rule of thirds, as we talked about in our last episode. There are going to be days that are just downright bad. And we got to stay the course no matter how we feel. All right, friends, that's your motivational moment. We'll be right back to wrap things up. All right, friends, we've done it again. That's season 3, episode 2. Recorded on this Friday the 13th. What a great episode. I'm excited to be back in the mix and here with you as always. Boy, I want to give a big shout out to Justice Carl Walker and Brother President Russell Edmonds. Thanks for spending time with me and with us today. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Like any voyage, it's a little bit more fun if we can bring a friend or two along. The Lawyers is brought to you by Apex, where aptitude meets excellence, and powered by the Green Law Firm, your one-stop shop for everything real estate. Remember to email your questions and feedback to lawyers@apexbc.com. I forgot to tell you to live life in peace and not pieces in our wellness check. So I'm going to tell that to you now. What else is there? Anything else? Thanks to Angela Green and to all of our friends who make this show possible. Until next time, friends, be well.